We handle all phases of it. So tonight we're going to talk one about managing your operation, but the other thing is because my cohort Andrew is sick with the flu, so I'm going to do her presentation for you, focusing on credit. So dealing with that. But to give you a little bit of background on myself, I've had several businesses from manufacturing to high-tech robotics and things like that, software technology. I've also done consulting, I've done training, so I've had a variety of businesses. So through my career, I've exported on every continent except Antarctica, so understand that world. So like I said, diverse background, and people say, why do I do this? It's my time to give back. So I made a lot of dumb mistakes when I had my businesses, and so I'm trying to keep people from making the same dumb mistakes I made. So as you go forward. So as we go forward, please ask any questions you want. Don't sit there quiet because it does you no good. You know, at the end of the day, this is for you. The other thing is I want to stress to you is as you move forward, I'll give you my card later. If you want to follow up, touch me on anything, happy to do that for you. So, and to give you a clue, I'm based in Richmond, so I cover the Commonwealth. So I spend a lot of time over here in the Southwest. So, like I said, don't worry about the distance aspect. I travel over here all the time. So don't take that into account. I hate when people say, we have to come so far. I said, really, it's not that bad. So look at that. So with that, before I get started, to help me, can you just give me briefly what you're trying to do? So then that way I have it in my head. So then that way when I talk about something, I try to correlate to what you're actually doing.
So it's stealth wireless communication system.
Okay. With him or?
Separate.
Okay.
Better purpose.
Better purpose, okay.
So we're doing outdoor recreation guiding and
Okay.
I'm trying to open a USDA inspected remedy processing
Okay.
campground and a trout halo.
Okay.
Restaurant,
Restaurant? What kind?
a little small diner.
Diner?
Local diner.
American food? Or Asian fusion?
Mainly American.
Oh, okay.
I will have, I know how to Google.
Okay, all right.
There'll be specials.
Okay, all right, Google specials.
Doing retail, metaphysical full shop.
Okay,
Learning to expand to a conference room and build more of an event base.
okay. So like event planner type aspect? Okay, with your own location?
Right.
Okay.
my 11-year-old and I are starting a publishing company.
Okay.
A hospital.
Hostel? Okay. So location of the hostel?
Having
Okay. All right. Sounds good. We've got a combination of recreation and technology in that. Like I said, hopefully you guys have been talking to each other so how you can work together, because I already see how ways you could actually work off each other to create more opportunities. But, you know, that's the big thing about this program is getting to know the other people and how you can actually capitalize and help each other as you move forward doing this. So great, that helped me a lot. So anyway, tonight we're going to talk about, first of all, credit reports and credit scores. Before I get started, how many people know their credit score? Okay, most of you. All right. How many people have ever found a problem on their credit report? Good, at least some of you have. This is the biggest thing that gets most people when they're starting out in business before you even think about opening your door. I tell people, really look at your credit report, because it's the first thing everybody starts looking at because you have no track record as a business. And so if there's mistakes, you end up bearing the burden of it because now people already have a reflection of it. And that's a problem, because now you're doing damage control right out of the starting gate. So I always tell people, get the report first, review it, fix the problems in it that are there, then go talk to people. So anyway, we're going to talk about history credit report, valid uses of a credit report, sources, sample credit report, information contained. And why is this one really important, information contained in it?
Shows that you pay bills.
Yeah, but one thing to remember right now, and why it's so important for you to understand this part of it, is because of the hacking incident. Okay? That is valued information. If you understand what just went out from your report, you kind of understand where you stand with things. Okay, so that's another reason why this has totally changed now how you look at this, because of cyber issues that have been going on. Obtaining the reports, if you have a dispute, how to resolve that, credit scores, and improving credit scores. Okay. The biggest thing is, do you pay your bills on time? That's what it comes down to. You know, we all have a reason. One time or another, we said why we couldn't pay the bill, like we couldn't find the bill. It didn't come in the mail. Dog ate it. We've heard everything that you can think of under the sun when it comes to this. Some of them are true, some of them are just, I couldn't pay the bill at the end of the day. So the one thing, though, to point out is, if you know that, that's the biggest thing. You know, I got to pay the bills. No matter what, I got to pay them on time. Because if I'm looking for any type of financing, or if I'm looking for somebody to invest in me, and they show you're slow on your payments, nobody talks to you. It happens time and again. It doesn't matter how great your idea is and everything else, people just do not talk to you because they figure you're a bad risk. So I always stress to people, that's one thing you need to focus on, trying to deal with it. Okay. Anyway, the history, unfortunately, you know, we couldn't do business like we did 100 years ago, where a handshake worked and we could trust them. And so now it's become this, where we sit here and we have this report. Now think about it. They talked about financing yet? Does that come up, the finance group?
That's in 2 weeks. That's in 2 weeks.
2 weeks, okay. All right. Think about it today. Years ago, when you were rated on the, when they talk about 5 C's, and I won't go into them, but one of the C's was character. Now, character was basically you as a person. Okay? Today, your character is this. Doesn't matter how good you are to the community, what you do volunteer-wise and everything else, this is what they say is your character, your credit score. So understand how it's dynamically changed as you go forward in this. This is what they put everything on. Say, this is what I swear on. This is you. Okay? So, think about it. Increase access to credit? Do we? Basically, if you get credit cards, all of a sudden, especially, I always cringe when the college students, they know they're in school, all of a sudden the cards are flying at them and they're taking them and not realizing that, yeah, it's great to spend it right now, but it's another thing to think about it. And debit cards, that's a kiss of death too with our young people, because they never see the actual money, so and if they don't look at their accounts, they wonder why they have all these overdraws and paying penalties. So the thing is, today, with our technology, pretty much, they can give you a decision in less than 30 minutes, whether they want to do business with you or not. Okay? And that's what this comes down to because of our technology. It's even going to get faster because of mobile apps and everything else that we're dealing with today. Okay, so we talked about credit approval. Everybody's gotten a car or a home, correct? So that was part of the process for you. Employment. Now we have some people trying to change that, and it's not part of your. But as I always tell people, this is really important if they're the people that are handling their money. To determine, because if they have a bad record, they learn how to deal with it. So this is actually becoming a major issue in a lot of companies. I just dealt with a company that somebody was only ordered supplies, you know, and they had the credit card. So they were ordering stuff. She was ordering stuff for her husband for his business, and it took them 18 months before they discovered it. You know, in that 18 months, she spent $150,000. You know, that went to their bottom line. You know, now, unfortunately, she's unemployed and she's being prosecuted. But the fact is, these are things that go on. But if they had looked at her past history, she had problems. So this is why this is still important. And today, where some people are saying we shouldn't be looking at that reality. Your insurance, getting professional licenses. You know, once again, the organizations want people of credibility because that's what keeps their organization up here. When they get bad people, then it damages the organization. And so they're trying to look at that. The applicant court order, or the IRS, we all know about the IRS. And then collections. And that's getting very vicious how people are doing collections today. And right now with tax season, all the scams flying out. Anybody gotten scam calls yet? About owing money, or you've gotten money and all you have to do? Yeah. So you just sit here and understand what's going on. So they get it from consumers, creditors, public records, internal, external inquiries, consumer statements, and collection accounts. And today with information even being more free-flowing, they're getting into every place even further. It's going to get even more in-depth because they can see your utility bills and everything else that's running around. Even though they don't put it in there, it's still visible to them now because of the way technology is. So like this past winter, what has everybody been hit with? Nice heating bills because of how cold it's been. And people are being shocked, especially those on fixed income, where they have these huge bills and they're saying there's something wrong with the meter. Fortunately, no, there's nothing wrong with the meter. It's just the type of winter we've had so far. So these are things that are unpredictable, but they happen. So, you know, I am married, but I have a different credit information than my husband. Yes and no. You know, because when you're joint, you're joint. You know, when the divorce happens, but there's still debt. You know, at the end of the day, it just doesn't disappear. You know, so both of you are accountable for it, but you also may have your separate accounts too. So it's something to understand as you go through this process, that they're not totally separate, they are together. Now I'm not going to even try to go through that one because it's too small, but here it's broken out into that segment. So section A, especially if you've ever been married before and used the other person's name, this really becomes important to make sure there's clarification if you've gotten a divorce or if there's been a death. So that way it's understandable. You know, even simple things, a lot of times people just skim over the date of birth comes into play. My daughter, she was only 6 months old. Somebody had her Social Security number and everything else, and we had to sit here and go and challenge it. Yeah. So these are things that you have to look at when you go through the process. This one's really important. You know, the previous addresses. You know, how many different locations have you lived at come into play. And then whoever your employer is at that time. Those who have served prison time. What's their credit report look like? There's nothing there, there's a gap. And because of that gap, it's a red flag. Because it shows no employment, it shows nothing. So typically it's already, even though you don't have to put it out there, it literally says clearly that you're incarcerated. So, and that's the thing that a lot of the people that have been incarcerated, their credit scores have pretty much been damaged for their time in the system. Anyway, today it's asking you statements. One of the things that they ask you to do is, you were injured on the job, an accident, you went through a divorce, unexpected medical bills because of somebody in the family getting a disease that created economic hardship. These are all really important things that come into play to kind of explain the story of why you're in a predicament. Because, we'd all love everything to flow perfectly in life, but it doesn't. And that's the thing we have to always kind of pay attention to. Anybody that's been in the hospital for any length of time, like somebody says, you spent 2 weeks in the hospital, well, you already know what that bill's going to look like. But what happens to the person that spent 6 months in the hospital? With that bill, and they're never going to get out from it. These are all the things that you look at when you're dealing with this. And then it also comes into play with health insurance and everything else. Can they pay their bills with the situation they're in? Anyway, this is the account history telling what you paid on and things like that. And think about one of the craziest ones right now is, how many of you have like an Easy Pass, either tolls or anything like that? Okay, nobody does that?
We don't have those.
Yeah, well, I just thought somebody went to DC or something like that to get the Easy Pass. Well, anyway, because I go up to DC a lot, I get the Easy Pass. Anyway, that's on my credit card. So I have to always pay attention to that because it's been hacked into. And it's showing that things, I wasn't up there at that time. So these are things you always got to pay attention to as your credit card gets dispersed out for automatic payments. It's out there, and people forget where they put those automatic payments to. And it comes back and haunts you because you don't remember them. And all of a sudden, these payments are starting to happen. And you're going, where's this coming from? So these are things you have to pay attention to when you have that automatic payment set up. Pay close attention to that because that's where it's getting people caught dealing with this. Anyway, when they're looking at your credit, okay, one of the biggest things is, do you pay on time? Also, they want to see what your credit power is, what's your max you can purchase. People say, I got a $15,000 credit card. It's good. I only have a $500 credit card. Well, that's an impact on your score because they want to see how much buying power you actually have, at the end of the day. Also, they look at, what's your outstanding debt. And I always tell people, if you go get a bank loan, okay, in your business as you move forward, and you sit there and say, it's a line of credit. I just need a line of credit. Okay? If I say I need $50,000, okay, for a line of credit, okay, what is the purpose of a line of credit? You buy something and you immediately pay it, right? Okay, a lot of people make a mistake with the line of credit and start using it for other things, purchasing things that should not be in a line of credit purchase. Okay, you buy a piece of equipment. That's not something you buy because you're not paying it down immediately. But people misuse that, and then what happens is they get above the limit. So if you ask for $50,000, remember the bank is expecting you to stay around 25. So if you're staying constantly above 25, they will turn that into a term loan. It will no longer be a line of credit. So understand that when you get that line of credit, it's this. And when you think you have 50,000, you really don't have 50. They look at 25. So you may go to 40, but you better be paying it immediately down below 25 when you do your next bill payment. So we look at this stuff. So, and then they look at dates reported and that kind of stuff. And then understanding, especially just here recently in the news when stores close out. So like when Circuit City closed out, and then down this way we got potentially Cabela's and Bass Pro. Potentially something happened. These are things you kind of have to pay attention to if you have a relationship with those particular places that close their doors. Because there may be issues and you're not able to resolve them because they're no longer in business. So these are things you kind of have to be aware of. Anyway, the public record information collection agencies, if they've ever been involved, and inquiries. So, like I always tell people, if you're going to go get quotes for something, make sure you do it as a cluster. You know, within a week's time, 2 weeks' time. So that way you can argue that it was for one item you were looking for specifically, so it's not a credit hit against your credit score every time. If you sit here and you say, looking at a piece of equipment, and then 3 weeks later you look at the same piece of equipment, no location, and they're doing a credit check, those are going to be hits against you. Okay? When you decide to do it as a cluster. That way you can argue the point that it was for the same thing. Okay? When you look at this. So these are things to pay attention to, because it's amazing. If you just start talking to someone today that's potentially purchasing anything, all of a sudden they get enough information to do a quick inquiry. They can get information, you don't have to supply them everything. And they can get a preliminary, and it's a hit. And you're thinking, wait a second, I wasn't really in there seriously or anything, but you filled out paperwork, they had a discussion, and they immediately just did a check on it. So these are things to kind of really pay attention to when you're filling out things. Are they going to do this inquiry anyway? So you have to make sure that they are not. So, anyway, this is a website to go to opt in or out of firms offers of credit or insurance. So, anybody get hammered by Experian with the recent thing? I know I got hit by it. I think I've had 4 organizations that I've been hit with where their stuff has been hacked. And so the information is loose, and all of a sudden, what's Experian doing? Advertising all the things it's trying to do now. And you're thinking, why weren't you doing this before? You know, through the process. Damage control. And I always say that's the media that comes into play trying to show themselves different, but you don't hear anything from TransUnion and that dealing with this whole thing.
I thought it was Equifax that just got hacked.
Yeah, it was Equifax. Thank you. Yeah. And so that's the thing that we have to look at. Understand that typically like TransUnion, there's 3 of them. TransUnion's typically more on the West Coast. That's where it's used at more often. The other thing is that you get, you have the ability now to pull all 3 reports. Anybody pulling all 3 reports?
No, I use the website thing, they're going to pull 2. They pull Experian, I think, and TransUnion.
Okay.
Credit Karma.
Yeah, Credit Karma, yeah. But in actuality, you have 3 reports,
Right.
okay, that you're in. So you're in Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. So you're actually in 3 reports.
Because I never understood why they have different numbers and it's the same.
And it's their formula that they have set up. You know, their special math, as I call it,
Yeah.
that they've set up, and that's how they are. That's why the range is different and everything else. It's unfortunate because it makes it difficult for us to figure it out. But I tell people, make sure you look at it because each report looks different. And the thing is that when I tell people, by law, you can pull all 3 in a year's time. Okay? So I tell people is every quarter, pull 1 report. And then the next quarter, pull the other report. And then in the 3rd quarter or 4th quarter, pull the other one. That way you get all 3 reports, but you're seeing them at different times, so it's not just there at that moment, all 3. So then that way you're kind of seeing things. Because you're absolutely right. There's a common theme on the East Coast. These are the 2 that are used all the time. But as we have companies locating here from the West Coast to the East Coast and that, if this is what they're using, that's what they're going to focus on. So that's the report they're going to pull on. So understand that as companies move, that's not going to really change anything. They're going to go to where they're comfortable with what they typically use. So you're all three. And the thing I bring this up is, the one report you use all the time may have the best information in the world, but the other one that you rarely ever use or never use has mistakes in it. So you have to always be looking to protect yourself in all three of them. And that's your time and consumer that you spend for due diligence. So in one aspect, they gave you the ability to see it, but at the end of the day, there's really no repercussions against the companies for all the work you have to do to fix it. Which is unfortunate, but that's reality when you deal with it. Does it?
I would hope not.
It's not, it's looking at your finances. You know, if you had a divorce, you had a divorce. At the end of the day, all they're looking at is the debt. You know, or what's not being paid, things like that.
It does contain information about the divorce if you inherit the credit card bill.
That's right. Yeah, when somebody does change it, things like that, then it comes back and haunt. Anyway, you know, none of this information, even though a lot of people feel that information's in there, it's not. The thing is at the end of the day, it's really focusing in what are your numbers? What are your personal dollars? What's the dollars you have? What's the buying power you have? You know, that's all they're looking at. At the end of the day, that's what it comes. And that's why I try to tell people lots of times when you walk into a lending institution looking for a deal, okay? If you're going to a credit union or community bank, it's a different relationship than you going into a large national bank. Okay? So I always tell people when you're looking for potential financing, talk to different sectors. So you talk to a credit union or community bank, because that's your local. You talk to a regional bank, and you talk to a very large bank. And why I tell people to do that? Because it gives you different perspectives, what they see and interpret about you. Okay, at the end of the day, that helps you. Because remember, a bigger bank, the first thing you're looking at is your credit score. You're in a box. If you're inside that box, you get to go to the next stage. If you're outside that box, you're out. Where the other two are going to look at you a little bit differently. You know, but the thing is, that's what you're trying to take into account with this. If you have something that's really unique for your footprint, and you know they're only going to understand the local area, it's your community bank and your credit union that kind of really understand and kind of understand what's going on in the community. And so they're going to be more apt to try to work with you as you look at your business accounts and things like that. But at the end of the day, I tell people try all of them. When you're asking for a potential interest in what you're trying to do, you'll get a very clear picture of who wants to play and who doesn't. And if they all three agree, great. You get to choose the best one. You know, if only one of them agrees, well, you know, that's the only one you got. And if they all tell you no, at least you're going to hopefully all say no for the same reason, but 9 times out of 10, it's not. So just expect that. Because remember, you're in business that's of interest to you, correct? All right? Remember something, bless you. The banks are the same way. They have an interest. They have a portfolio that's very diverse. When they have too much risk in a particular area, they start offloading. Okay? So when we had the economic collapse about 10 years ago, that's what happened to a lot of small businesses. The banks called and said, you got to pay your payment full. And a lot of people don't realize that, even though you paid your bills on time and everything else, they can call in the marker at any time. And when they do that, it's a scary feeling, especially at that time, because no other banks were giving money. So they were really up a road. So I always tell people, pay attention to that. Watch how your bank is shifting. Because if they're focusing in sectors, you'll see it. And if they start to kind of go away from your sector, it might be a warning flag to be aware of. Okay? So you're always looking out for yourself. Because, like I said, You know what you have invested in that company. You know, banks a business too. They're in there to make money, and that's what they're looking at. So realize that. Also understand something. When you're going forward here, because of regulations with the lending industry and that, if I have to do a $50,000 loan, and if I have to do $1 million loan, I still have to do the same paperwork. So at the end of the day, and a number of them work on commission, they're going to focus more on this than the $50,000. Just understand it's nothing personal, it's just business. So when you look at this. So anyway, none of that information's there. The biggest one we always hear about though is this one here, political affiliation. We tell them no, it's not there. So anyway, we talked about this. You talked about Credit Karma. It's another, and actually that's what most people are starting to go through all the time is Credit Karma to pull their information. The thing is that, you know, this one doesn't give you a credit score. You still have to pay to get the credit score. You know, all you get is the basic credit. You still don't see your credit score, which I could never figure out because I went through all this trouble and they didn't give you the opportunity to see your credit score. And at the end of the day, that's the most important thing. That's what you're judged on. And so that's the whole thing when you're dealing with this. Yeah, we already answered that. You always have to sit there and take, because like I said, as people go into the system and today's hacking and everything else that's going on, it has an impact on how you have to look, and that's why you have to do your due diligence. And if you're starting businesses, it's even more critical because now you're in two different accounts. Because you have your personal side and you have your business side. So you really have to pay attention to that, how you look. And please keep everything separate. Because I cringe when I see people that keep crossing. It leads you in trouble. Even though you're sitting there saying, well, you know, my company needed $500, so I gave it. I said, no, you better have to build out that this back with all documents so you can keep track of it. But when you have, remember, as an individual, you'll look at things differently. When you're a business, you're going to sit here and have a different look. And sometimes you're always looking at cost. If somebody will offer you something, you'll pursue it, and it sets you up. And because most of you are going to be based on your business, it's going to still be based on what you are personally because of what you're trying to start out with. I mean, anybody starting out, the first thing they're looking at is you as a person. Business is secondary. Once a business has been in existence for 5 years or more, then they start looking at the business. But until then, they're looking at you. So just realize that. Okay, identity fraud's on the rampage in today's world because of technology. Remember that if you don't have the best credit score, there are plenty of nonprofit organizations that are willing to assist you through the process to help improve your score. And I always tell people, if you have a low score starting out and you're trying to start a business, don't get upset because no lender is going to touch you, okay? Can you still start the business? Yeah, there's different ways. I started my first business by bartering it. So you can do different things depending on what the business is with it. And today, because of programs like, how many of you have heard of crowdfunding? Heard of that? Okay, that's an option, okay, depending on what you do. Okay, I've done about roughly for companies close to 50 campaigns. And that's ranged from restaurants to high tech. Okay, and the most I've ever gotten is over $400,000 for a restaurant. And then the high techs, they have their number figured gaming, things like that. People really love to try to purchase to get your first ones in. People love to be first. That's why crowdfunding works the way it does. There's another group called Kiva, and that's another organization where it's actually a loan, but it's a 0% loan. And basically what people are is like If he wanted money for his project, all of you would put in roughly $25 till it adds up to a pay, and then his job is to pay that amount back. So it's 0%. Then the money's readily available for other people to take advantage of. So it's a global thing. So it's fairly new to the United States. It started overseas first. So that's, yeah, KIVA. Yeah. Yeah, no. Yeah. KIVA. Anyway, those are things you have to look at when you're looking at business. Is if you have great credit score, go talk to the bank and work your deals and things like that. If you don't, you have to think differently. You have to think totally out of the box, how to make your dream come true. And I always stress that. It's attainable. You just have to look at it differently, how you take it up.
Did you talk about Kickstarter?
The Kickstarter is crowdfunding.
Yeah, I actually got a chance to go meet the CEO in Manhattan. They're really, really good people. It's a really good program.
Yeah, they're, and Sandy's group is a part of this. You ever heard of B Corporation, Benefit Corporation? Okay. This is something you look at when you're in your business, is a benefit corporation is a for-profit business that basically has causes, okay? Whether it's within the business or it's what you do outside the business that you're really focused on, okay? So like Virginia Community Capital, where Sandy works, which is a bank, they're a benefits corporation, we think a bank is, but their focus is food dividends. Okay, so they're looking at places where there's not grocery stores and things like that. So that's their focus and that's their theme. Okay, very well recognized. They're the leader here in Virginia about trying to help with that. I have other companies that high tech, and basically all the profits, every bit of the profits go to certain organizations, and that's how the model's set up. You know, I have one that's just totally focused on veterans within their system and outside their system, whatever they get profit-wise. So it's kind of how you look at it. But Kickstarter it has to be the right type product or service, and I stress that to people. And I've worked with a lot of people, and I'll tell them, I said, don't do this on Kickstarter. Don't do this on GoFundMe, because you won't get anything.
There's another one. I can't. It's right up there with Kickstarter, and I can't.
Indiegogo?
Indiegogo.
Yeah, Rocket Hub went under. So there's roughly over 3,000 sites globally. So it's huge, special emphasis, environmental, all that. It's a huge market. So it's things to think about.
How does one determine which sector, if that's an option that you're looking at?
An option, if you're asking my professional opinion, Kickstarter has the greatest target base. The other reason is, I'm digressing off into another area, is finance, but I'll answer it. Anyway, Indiegogo's success rate is 10%. Only 10% of people hit their target. Okay? Kickstarter gets 33% hit their target. The difference is Indiegogo just takes your package and puts it up. Okay? Kickstarter reviews it and makes a decision, do they want it to be on the website? And so that's why people are more willing to invest in that than Indiegogo. Indiegogo is also, Kickstarter is all or none. So if you want $10,000, if you don't get $10,000, you get nothing. Indiegogo, you can sit there and only get $5,000. You can take the $5,000 if you have to pay a penalty, but you can get it. Okay? So they have their different dynamics. So it's kind of just understanding how to play. GoFundMe, unless it's a nonprofit or a real cause issue, do not put yourself on GoFundMe. I've seen so many companies put themselves on GoFundMe going, no, you're not going to get anything, and they don't. Okay? So it's a thing to think about. If you're thinking about that, I'll be happy to talk to you about that some other time, dealing with that. So it's like I said, it's for certain businesses, and it works very well with it. So just, those are options. That's why I always tell people, they're options. And that's what's important. Okay, that we already know the answer to is the fact is reality. They throw it up there, it's your job to defend yourself. So as the cliche goes, even though our justice system says you're innocent until proven guilty, in this system it's basically you're guilty and you have to prove you're innocent. So, very different.
How can I do that?
Hmm?
I just think,
Right.
they gave me an address in somewhere in Massachusetts, and, you know, I just happened to be looking, I got never lived there. I just think that's wrong, that they don't have to.
I don't disagree, but unfortunately, government's protecting it. Yeah, government protects it. Yeah. Government's the one that can change the playing field, how it looks. You know, if for everyone they had wrong, if you could get paid for your time, then it would totally change what they would start doing from a quality standpoint. But because there's no touch, and that's unfortunate, that's a lot of things with insurance, anything related to insurance. So we deal with this. Anyway, if you have a dispute, you can basically contact the credit bureau, give your documentation why it's wrong, and they will sit there and work through the process to clean up your record. And usually they're fairly good about doing it with it. So just be aware of that, dealing with it. But in today's world, with all the hacking going on, it does create more of a pain, what's going on.
So when you say through the credit bureau, are you talking about when you say to dispute it?
The Equifax or the Experian or the TransUnion, yeah, whoever's got your information.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, you know, not that I believe everything I see on TV, but did you see that 60 Minutes expose where they couldn't get Equifax to respond for over a year and a half?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is there a U.S. credit bureau?
That's
or somebody that
basically,
you
that's
can
what the,
complain-
that consumer organization that was created under President Obama.
Consumer Protection Agency?
Yeah, that's their job now.
Okay.
That's who you go to if you can't get a response in a timely manner. And they're the ones that can go in and take those groups on. Theoretically, yes. I don't disagree with that, but that's your option.
And the guy from Equifax unloaded a bunch of this stock too before the breach came out.
Yeah.
They just said it was just ironic.
Yeah.
Didn't do anything illegal.
But anyway, so you know what that is. Let me give you a reality check when it comes to credit score. Okay, if you're looking for money. All right. Most lenders, you have to be at 720 or above to have a serious discussion. Okay. If you're looking for like a microloan or working with a CDFI or working with a nonprofit organization, the state goes down to 650 with their loan program. Those nonprofits typically 620, and some will go down to 590, but it's real rare. So I tell people if you're below 650, it's pretty much you're not going to get anything. So that's just
And we're
kind
about
of
650.
yeah.
We won't go below it.
Yeah. So I always try to be very honest with people with that, so you know where you play at. So that way you understand things. So dealing with it. So there we go, Credit Karma jumped up there. So they give you the score. That's the difference between the annual credit report. So that's the thing you're dealing with that. So like I said, those are great tools to take advantage of and to work on. This is probably the most important thing. Like I said, you brought it up early on when you said the payment history, how often you pay on time, that's the big thing. And then what you owe. You know, what's that spread between what you have in your pocket and what's debt? So what you owe to the creditors.
Look at like 20% is what they.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing is, the lengthier credit history, you know, the longer you've had it, the more credible you are. Any new credit you've taken on, and then the different sectors that that you have, and credit cards, home payments, those type of things. So that's kind of how your model breaks out with it. And I always tell people, it's just paying the bills on time. That's the biggest chunk. So if you do that, the others kind of fall in place. And, somebody sat there and working with the incarcerated, and he says, how do I build my credit? I said, look, you can get just a basic credit card that gives you only $100. I said, go in and buy a candy bar and a credit card, and they pay it at the end of the month. I said, it's your credit history. You're starting to show payment. You don't have to sit here and buy something for $100. You just have to buy something and just pay it at the end of the month. I said, it's building the history. That's all. So when this comes down to it. So anyway, this kind of gives that model, has not changed with it.
Is it true that once you stay at 33%, it's like if you get a $100 credit card, I was told that creditors like to see you, if you got $100, don't spend any more than 33 or keep it at 33.
If you, yeah, I mean, if you're sitting there, they want to see every month you're paying it down. And 33% is kind of like the housing market. How much do you have to your home? How much debt out do you have? So you can make the home payment. So yeah, 33. In business, it's 50. 33 when it's personal. They will say, probably no, but in reality, yes. That's how you get your best interest rate. The higher your credit score, to get the preferred rate. That's reality. So even though somebody may give you a loan, you're going to pay a higher interest. So I always tell people, these are business decisions you're making because that's money that's coming out of your pocket or coming out of the business. So you weigh these things. What's my ROI when you deal with this? Improve my credit score. Well, we said number one, which some of you have already done, credit score is accurate. Number two, which you've all said, paying the bills on time. Reducing the balances on credit instead of just paying the minimum charge. And then, how many credit cards do you have? Most people today are really trying to stay very focused that they only have a couple at max. And like I said, this one is, if you're going to go out and do a check, make sure you just do it at the same amount of time, same cluster, so you can argue it, which helps decrease the hits on it. And like I said, this is so true, this last one. There's lots of companies that you pay a fee, and they will help you. At the end of the day, all they're doing is what the nonprofits are doing. Doing the same criteria as everything else. It's just now you're taking money out of your pocket. I always laugh about that. You've got poor credit, you're having trouble financially, and yet they're going to take money out of your pocket to try to get you straight. Kind of like, I got plenty of nonprofit organizations out there that free of charge. They do a nice job, so take advantage of those.
And it's not a bad thing to ask for a higher credit limit, even if you don't need it, because they look at how much credit limit they've given you and how much you owe. So
Yeah.
if you have an established credit card and you have, just ask them.
Yeah.
I guarantee they'll whip a new credit line on you quickly.
Yeah, no, they do that. I mean, they will sit there and offer it to you, as long as you're not sitting here and getting Google-eyed and say, look how much I can go, and then go up and then go. Just keep that line so you keep the spread, as they say. What's the score? Okay. Okay, we definitely don't want the last one. Bankrupt. We definitely don't want that one at the end of the day. When you're in business, this is personal, but when you're in business, this is an option, depending on your situation. So you just got to understand that dynamics. Like a lot of companies, they restructure, so they declare bankruptcy so they're going to restructure. And you happen to be the person that's owed money. Fortunately, you lose on the end of the day. But that's how some groups revamp themselves, change themselves. So just understand that does happen. I got hit by a company, they owed me $250,000, and all they did was first 20, now we're number 21, so I got nothing. So I lost $250K, so out of that. So, you know, that's the real world. Okay, there. How long can the director be reported by the credit bureau? Your bankruptcy? 7 years. Sometimes it'll carry over, so make sure you notify them to say that doesn't need to be there. Because all people see is they see bankruptcy, they don't look at the date or anything, and they just sit there and focus on that. So when the time limit hits, it'll move. Dealing with it. Like if you got a payment plan with the IRS, that type of stuff, make sure it's all identified. And so 7 years and 180 days.
So when you fill out some documents, sometimes it'll say, do you ever file bankruptcy? Or does ever mean forever, or does it mean those 7 years?
Technically, you can't get penalized if you don't put it, if it's beyond this limit. You know, at the end of the day, it's true what you're stating because that's what this says. You know, because when they pull the credit report, it's not there. So, I always tell people that's why you understand where you're at.
Now, 7 years is for like a bank or something, it's not the IRS, there's no limit, right?
Right, as long as you owe money to the IRS.
Yeah, it'd be 20 years,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, as long as you keep owing money to the IRS, you will always be identified.
Right. As long as you owe money to any government, you owe money.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, whether it's local or state, that, yes. So, so anyway, basically, if somebody wants their payment, and this is what creditors do, they basically, initial one will come after you, and after a period of time when there's no response, you get nothing, it actually gets sold to another group, and that group takes it and comes after you. That's why you sit here and say, can you never let go? What it is, it's just moving from one organization to another. And it's just trying to find if somebody can finally get the money, you know, at the end of the day. So, anyway, see Virginia, 20 years, 10 years, Tennessee. You're close to the border, you know where to move.
I got a question. I got a question on that one.
Yeah.
I was told that if let's say you owe the hospital money and they sell your credit or your debt to another company, supposedly you can dispute that with Equifax or whatever because they sold the original contract.
Mhm.
You know, in other words, if it's on your credit, you didn't sign anything with creditor, stop calling me, because you had a hospital. You know, is that true?
Are you still in, are you in discussions with the hospital anymore, or you're done with the hospital?
Well, I recognize that. I mean, not me personally. I just
Yeah,
keep
yeah,
seeing
no,
this
I'm
on
just using that as an
Facebook.
example.
But I mean, once they sell it, the hospital really won't even talk to you anymore.
Yeah, right.
So once they sell that debt,
Mhm.
can you get it removed off of your report? And I forget what the terminology was, but you don't have a contract with said
Yeah.
creditor, so therefore it shouldn't be on your credit. Is that true?
True, if you made the payment back, or.
No payments whatsoever. They sold the debt. In other words, you know,
Yeah.
if you went to,
Yes, if they paid for the debt, yes, you have legal recourse.
so you can't dispute it based on that.
If they just given it to a credit company to go get it and get whatever they want, and they get a percentage of it, then it's still tied to the hospital. But if they basically said, you buy this cluster, then at that point you have legal recourse, unless the contract you signed with the hospital originally has that noted
Right.
in there. So that's the document you have to look at. Okay. Because they didn't clear judgment with you at that point. But the fact is, it's rare when they do that. Usually just tell the credit company you get a percentage.
Right.
And let them burn the energy trying to get it at that point. And hospitals are tough. We know what the hospital bills cost, and it's really tough to ever get out from under those. Anyway, it's not a financial asset, it's basically our life. That's how we're judged anymore. is what is your credit score. So that's reality. We talked about reviewing reports, keeping the balances low. Definitely the first one should have been this one, pay bills on time every month. And then always protect your good credit. Do everything you can to do that. And that's why they talk about having the rainy day funds and things like that. Questions?
Okay. We'll go back where you're talking about keeping your personal finances and credit separate from the business. So say you get your business license, or how does that work as far as, does your business create its own credit?
Yeah.
So you get an LLC or corporate?
Basically, when you become a business, as I always tell people, if you're small, you really don't do this, but if you're starting to create economics, you know, good growth for yourself in that, and I tell people to get themselves registered on Dun & Bradstreet, because that's your business credit, okay, and they can see that. See, if you're dealing just with the local bank and nothing more, they will see the business entity, and that's what they'll focus on. Okay.
So you create that account, that
Yeah,
extra
yeah.
start.
Always keep those accounts separate.
So
Do
where does
not
that
ever
start?
cross over.
Where does it start? Maybe as far as store,
Actually, you don't have a score. That's why I said they look at you first. That's why when you go into a bank loan, they sit there and say, I need $10,000. This is a new startup? Yes. Well, most banks will say, well, we don't do startups. But if a bank says, okay, we'll do that, they're going to look at your personal. That's all they're going to look at. Okay. It's not until you're beyond 3 years that they will actually look at the business.
and how do you keep those separate?
Well, you do. You keep them separate because they have separate numbers. Okay? Because you have their own bank account and everything else. So if you're paying yourself a salary, it's coming from that business into your account. Okay? But if you're sitting here, the business is struggling, and you're taking some of your money and putting it into the business, and you're not using it as a loan payment, then that shows cross-mingling. And at that point, you have everything's focusing on you at that point. So business can't be looked at as a standalone. So I always tell people it's 3 years, typically it's a mark that they look at you as that you're actually going to survive.
Let's say there's a startup, but you've got your account and stuff, and let's say you're like paying rent or something. If you're paid for it out of your own pocket or your own finances you already have, can you just go ahead and put that in your business account?
Yeah, you can sit there and say, this is my pool of money I've saved for this business, and basically that becomes a business entity. Yeah,
And then it separates
yeah,
itself.
it's immediately
Okay,
separate.
there you
Yeah,
go.
yeah, yeah, it's not a problem.
And this is kind of like in the accounting world, but if you put your own money in your business, that is not considered an expense. It's considered a capital investment.
Yeah,
So you kind of want to try not to do that. You want to start your business with whatever amount of money you think you're going to need to pay your rent. Because if you keep putting your own money into it, it looks like it just, all it is your capital investment. Like, you don't deduct that.
Well, you say you put your, you use what you have, but if you have to use yourself to get a loan,
yeah, but here's an example.
that's kind of where I'm getting
Yeah,
at.
but-
It's like you just said it's, we're.
So like if you're starting a business, most of the time people put money aside to get the business going. Okay. So let's just say it's $5,000. $5,000 goes over, and that's a pool. Okay. That's just capital investment you've made into the company. From that point on, it has to self-sustain itself on $5,000. You're, what Kathy was bringing up, if you're starting to put money over to it, just like I'll pay the rent out of my pocket every month. At that point, then you're causing yourself headaches. Because we can't tell where the line is drawn between the business and you personally, your personal side.
Then when you get ready to file taxes,
Yeah.
your CPA's gonna eat you alive because he's wanting to know what you paid yourself a salary, and it's a mess. I owned a business for 15 years before I moved here, and that's the first thing they got me on that year, is because I had everything together. Tore me a new one.
Well, it depends on the structure, you know, when they talked to you, I guess last week about, what type of business structure you set up. Partnerships and LLCs are kind of taxed the same way. But, you know, you really need to, if you do have to put your own personal money into your business to keep it afloat, keep a very good record of it, because your accountant, your CPA at the end of the year will take that portion of it and make that part of your capital investment. So let's say you started with $100, you put in another $500, so you've got a $600 investment, whereas your partner only has a $100 investment. All of a sudden, you're the major person in that organization.
Let's say, starting off, you put this money in there, do you pay it back to yourself as the capital of it, or just keep it?
You can say, I'm giving this as a loan to the company, and then every month when the company gets its payments, it pays you back a portion per month. Yeah, people do that. You can do that.
Okay.
That's-
But if you're gonna do that, talk to your CPA
Yeah.
before you do it.
Yeah.
Because there are tax ramifications.
So, but the thing is that dealing with all this is just don't ever cross. That's the biggest thing I can tell you. When it does, it's a kiss of death. I've seen more companies, and you get, the reason you cross, immediately, not only do you get ringed by your CPA in that, if you use a CPA, I promise you, you're a red flag for the IRS. The IRS comes out and audits you. And
I got audited 2 years after that.
yeah, and they take you through the ringer, and you have nothing to depend on at that point. So that's why I always try to stress to people. That's why you don't say anything. It's clear lines with it.
And we typically look at if it's a partnership or there's a number of owners within the business, anyone that has over 20% ownership in the business, we want to look at their personal financials as well as the business financials. No matter how long you've been in business, it's just something we want to look at. That we do take into consideration how much equity you put into business. Because we're not going to give you 100% financing for whatever you ask, because we want to see that you have some skin in the game as well.
When you take your company to a bank like that and they do run your personal credit, you're kind of essentially co-signing for the company in a funny way, right?
Mhm.
And I think that's what he was asking in the first place. When you use your credit, it's not that you're using your credit, you're using it as a co-sign to that company. So, I mean, it becomes the company finances, but you're really just signing it saying you're going to back it up if anything goes with that. So that's the difference between your physical money that you're putting into it versus you're going through a bank, and that's why they use your information, because it's the company money, you're just co-signing. So that, I think that's,
Yeah.
is that what you were asking?
We're somewhere around there.
Well,
We're good. We'll keep everything safe.
Yeah, and I can't stress that enough. Like I said, you can give a loan to your company, but it's a loan. And the company is going to pay you back regular payments. Whatever's written, it's a contract, literally, that you put to your company, and that's what you get paid back every month. It does not miss, oh, well, this month we don't have enough funds, we skip. At that point, it becomes then as one. It has to be very clear and defined. And that's just the way it's set up. You can't cross mingle.
Now, can you report that, and does that help your company if you do that?
What? That's just you're paying a loan payment, yeah, to your thing. It shows a track record you're making payments.
So that's what I'm saying, so
Yeah.
that'll actually help in a
Yeah.
way versus
Yeah.
the tax at the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, he gets his money back, or she gets her money back, whoever it may be. But the fact is, it's showing you have a track record of making payments on time. But when you skip a payment because it's personal, tied to your company, at that point, they sit there and say, no. Now you are basically one. That's why I said, you gotta be clear, defined to make those payments. So, can't jump around. This month I'll pay it, next month I won't.
If you take on your spouse's debt, does that change your credit?
Been nice talking to you.
I don't know, I'm not married, so does it change your credit
Mhm.
number when you get married?
Yeah, if you're taking on and everything's joint,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, you'll have different score.
Check his credit score.
Yeah.
I mean, I have my own personal credit card, and my husband has his own personal credit cards. But when you run our scores, it shows his credit card balance and mine in my Equifax number. So, once you're married in Virginia, you're the same person. I don't know about Tennessee, but in Virginia, his debt is your debt, and vice versa.
So you make sure he pays his bill every month?
I make sure he does. That's the good thing
So, yeah, and remember that lots of times in relationships, you know, and I mean, it's a difficult decision in today's world, but it is a really important discussion. What debt do you have? Because it does have a significant impact, especially if you're trying to purchase anything, car, home, whatever it may be, significantly impact. And you'd rather know that ahead of time before the marriage actually happens, and all of a sudden everybody's surprised. Well, yeah, I have all this outstanding debt.
That's not a surprise.
Where did that?
Is it?
Yeah. I guess we never really had that conversation. Okay, fair enough. So yes, it does have an impact. Yeah. So, and remember, the reason is that like when you get your business started, okay, and you know, the question will come up. You know, if does the spouse understand what's going on here? They will ask that question. And they may ask the spouse to basically cite judgment that they understand that if it fails, that you guys have to pay this back.
I think what he's saying is don't get married.
No, it's okay to get married.
It's very
Just understand that the spouse has to really be in all in with it too. That's what happens lots of times is they just haven't had that real serious discussion. They talk about when everything's good. It's when it goes bad that nobody wants to have those discussions at that point. So I always say do it early on. It's just like partners. Same thing. You better have everything mapped out when things go bad before you even get the business going. So if it hiccups, who does what? So it's already spelled out. As I always tell people, when you're married and you're in together, you spell it out. So if it goes to divorce, we know how it's going to go. And I mean, you'd rather have that conversation when you're still talking to each other. Because when you're not talking to each other, it's ugly. I've dealt with too many of these in my doing this over the past several years. It is not a pretty scene. And it's just trying to get people to deal with it.
Who gets the dog?
Yeah. Well, the dog always wins, you know. It's the business that really gets that thing. And like I said, this is really important. I can't stress that enough. If there's a significant other involved or a partner, you've got to have everything written out ahead of time in the contract so everybody knows how it's going to go if things start to go south. I can't stress it. I can't tell you how many conversations I've sat in on that has been the hot issue. You know, and it's bad. When I come in a room this size, I see the husband over there and the wife over there. And we're trying to talk about the business. And one wants it and the other doesn't want it. And then they're yelling at each other. I don't even know why I married you. Why am I loving? I'm thinking, okay, now I'm a marriage counselor. So the thing is, understand that is real world. So these are things you have to think about when you go into business, especially when you have a significant other. Because you got to have everybody on board, all hands.
Do y'all want to take a 5-minute break before he goes in, or do you want to keep going?
Now go ahead and take 5 minutes. Let me get the other one set up.
Hey, before we break, how many of you all have reached out to any of the mentors and taken advantage of this? Yeah. Don't wait until the last week.
Please don't wait until the last week to try
And
to write the
expect-
business plan.
You may want to go back to that 6th slide and add marriage right under employment right there.
Add one.
I have a question for you. The winner, when they win, obviously, they have to choose. Is it like a line of credit?
What it is
They got the lady.
It's just a brand new, it's not just expansion, it's a brand new.
She told me that I could get another employee identification number,
Which we are,
if I was running whatever same LLC.
But
But
if you go to our site, you got to go
I
to
wanted to talk to
before I
speak with it, and it's probably not wise to run both.
go straight to
Because then
you know, if you get like,
one place, then the other place is liable.
Yeah.
So I probably need to set up LLC.
No, that's, we just,
Set up
it's a
another
real.
LLC.
well, see, even if, let's say, and I got a business account.
Do you have the number for the local?
That was going to it, and I have, let's say,
Oh, I do, yes.
let's say $6,000. Let's
Agent
say I
code,
put
Donald
the
code?
$6,000, that's my account.
Yeah, you got a pen,
And then I get that.
it's probably on my phone.
12,000. Since that's a business thing, that,
Yeah, now, you have to actually pay, which is updated. It's reimbursed. It's not. You have to actually physically.
which that's fine.
And there could be, you said that was I went and did research, but I never had. It's how every considered the gratification.
Well,
And how does that work for me? Because a lot of the stuff that we do,
this is another funny thing
we
too.
work with,
I wouldn't have to do
there's
this.
so much money. How does that work?
All of them are trying to
Yeah.
help me out.
Yeah.
So I said, I can do this.
We don't have that.
Confusing, but we finally got to fill out a so I go by the agency place, and I had one question I had to ask them.
Because we pay for services. So how does that help?
She goes to,
Because that's where they all work in the field, is their services point.
you know, so anyway, he grabbed me. And I told him, I'll tell that to her. An hour later, she said, "We don't pay all that stuff." I'm sorry, man. I guess, well, I'm sorry, I'm office manager. I'll come down there and pick it up. No, it's because
The only thing I can think of, was, whenever, if there's some reason the difference in an LLC versus being incorporated. But
I was gonna run the restaurant under the LLC.
we don't sort of look like that's our restaurant is an LLC. I just, well, our business.
My bed and breakfast under that LLC. And I was just, when I bought the property, I bought it through the LLC. But I know that speak with the home about it, you know, something got hurt. There's two places they can sit. The restaurant, there's two places they can sit.
Someone went in there,
Because the reason
that was Sam saying, turn it off.
they can take.
I just turned it off. That's probably how I got turned on in the first place. Because I always turn it down.
So, when you get your bills, okay, let's say you're getting bills from, Blue Ridge and,
Yeah.
yeah, so let's say you're getting like stuff from Blue Ridge, and you're getting some stuff from Wally.
So you don't
They
have
all
to
carry
adjust
like
the sound.
different
Leave the sound the way you
And
want.
then maybe you're still getting like liquor from your ABC store. So with Blue Ridge, you gotta have a file for your file for your wine. Because your wine and your beer will come on different lists, even if you have the same one. Same with Wally, beer, and then a separate one for wine and alcoholic. Yeah, and like your ABC, or if you order in like Gatorade for your Cokes or something, you know, that would fall under your non-alcoholic. So the easiest thing to do is to create an Excel spreadsheet where every week you're going in and saying, okay, this is how much money I spent on beer this week. This is how much money I spent this week.
So throughout the year,
And this is what I spent.
yes.
Then maintain that. At the end of the year, you'll have a big net worth at the end of the year. It's always when you start your business.
I mean, I could sit there.
Every time I went to
Or we can
do a
do
job,
it this year, do this.
they almost
Just
six
basically
months.
just to make sure that we still got all that, and that you're keeping track of all the stuff.
Make the copy of the
That you're
check,
selling the
they pay
other
me cash,
thing
give
you
a
need to
receipt.
sell.
Right.
That way I know my game.
What is that percentage, 60/40?
And
But anyway,
Bank
I'm not worried about it because I'm not going to be a restaurant.
When you pay
But
yourself. I said, we pay.
I talked to a person today and he's called, I think Cake. Did they do a POS for your restaurant? I had a conference call, I was very impressed with it.
Okay.
I mean, all that stuff can be
Oh,
kept.
yeah, you can keep it, yeah.
Kept on
You get a fancy POS, and you can scan it, you can scan your orders on
You did that. He said, but what did you pay yourself?
Yeah.
I've never been that lucky.
Well, the system, I mean, after, he started high, but then I said, well, I only need this, and actually I found out I could.
You'll be an educational tool for
Hooked to this.
What did you eat all the
And then it wound
chocolate?
up being like $3,000. And it's got quick.
You remember
fix
him?
on it. It's got the printer.
I'm just waiting on my mom.
Kitchen. It's got the terminals. Yeah, that's a no-brainer. It'll save me $3,000. But hopefully they will keep all that
Yeah.
for me.
Just heads up, because if you kids. It can be, just make sure you never turn away any of your receipts. And then I think you're still supposed to keep, you have to check with ABC more. I think you're still supposed to keep all your receipts for 2 years after. If you have a business.
Cracker Barrel, they told me something that we need to keep for 7 years.
Now that's ridiculous.
Yeah, I had like boxes everywhere.
Hey, listen, we just crazy. They need to back up. Listen, so the kids and I had, my husband doesn't like Cracker Barrel and whatever, so the kids and I go to we had 4, not like bad enough where I felt like but just not good experiences. And then the last time we went, I was like, we're going to Exit 7. And it was just like regular great one for Cracker Barrel.
But see, Exit 7 used to be bad because people would come back and they'd go, oh, I don't know, we're good at Exit 7.
Yes, Dr. Tony Triplett and I had like an hour-long discussion about it one day because we were both fired up. So, but yeah, so but they, because my kids, I'll tell them so that I'm like, look, they only eat grape jelly. I don't bring this product, just bring this all grape jelly.
Right.
It never, like anymore, it never happens. My daughter just, for whatever reason, doesn't like butter. It's not gonna kill her. And she wants that big blob of butter on the pancakes and she's like, I did too. I'm like, are you sure now? But they had lots of times that she wanted to have it used to be great about it. And now, like.
Okay, let's go ahead and get started again. All right, here we go. Yep. Anyway, so we're going to talk about managing our business. The outline is you, human capital, insurance, marketing and sales, logistics, manufacturing, if somebody was doing that, finances, IT, and cyber. So this is a high-level overview. Okay, you as a person. Okay, 3 things you need to be successful in business. Okay, you need to be creative. Okay, you need, the TREP is the entrepreneur, TREP is for the millennials, and then manager. Okay, I want you to think about yourself. Typically you have 1 or 2 areas you're really strong in. And that's your standard. We can all do all 3 for short periods of time, but we cannot do them long term. And this is a thing of really understanding yourself. Because if you understand yourself, you know how to set your business up. And you got to admit what you're not good at. Like for me, I love risk. That's an entrepreneur trip, and I'm really creative. Those 2 things are great. I was terrible at this, so I always hired the best manager. Okay, I knew that, and I accepted that. I wasn't going to sit here and say, I can't do everything. I could care less. The thing is for me to make money in my business, and that's all I look at. Okay, at the end of the day. And so this is something you have to think about when you're doing it. Okay, so I've already said that. Whose strong suit is managing? That is your strongest suit. Anybody? Okay. Typically, managers are typically great for franchise. Because franchises, the model's already set, it's already designed, you just have to manage it and grow it. So it becomes very easy. So lots of times, people that are really good managers do franchise, because it's something that's already set up for them, they don't have to bust their tail for it. So, you know, it's just something to think about. So, your most important asset for growth, but also the biggest pain. As you get people on, or even if you have a significant other or a partner, I am telling you, you will have your challenges. And you will wonder what's going on. If you have a partner or a significant other involved in the business, you better make sure you have an employee manual. Because you got to set the guidelines as it goes forward. The most important thing for a small company is chemistry. It's not to get bodies, it is chemistry. The chemistry goes well, things happen. Very positive. If you have bad chemistry, it's a long nightmare of how many people you have. The thing is, it's choosing the right people that fit your model that you're trying to do. Do not hire people that are just like you. Hire people that are not like you, because you need that to be part of the formula. Because when you have a bunch of yes people, nothing gets done right. Okay? At the end of the day. And then the other thing is, are you the people person? You know? And I mean internally, that's inside the operation. Can you talk to the people, socialize, that? Can you connect? Or are you the strong silent type? Doesn't say anything. You know, they know what they have to do. Or external, you know, where you're dealing with the customers, where you're dealing with the supply chain, those type of things. What's your personality? Because if you're not a personal person, then you better be bringing somebody on real quick that's got that, because you're going to struggle. Unless you're a backroom person where nobody's seeing you, like a lot of people in the gig economy, or you're just working through the web. Okay, they really don't have to know you. But the fact is, if you're meeting people and you don't have the personality, there's issues. So understand that. It's nothing against you personally, it's just reality. For every job you're going to have in your company, you better have a job description, even for your position, stating what exactly your role is. Now, initially, you may start out with doing everything. That's fine. As you bring people on, you take those duties away and you give it to that person. That way, you know what your model looks like. The other thing is, of those that have been in business, how many of you had employees? Okay. When you had employees, did you ever get a complaint filed against you? Okay. Wait till you get a complaint filed against you. Then you will understand what it is to have all the stuff in place. And it's also understanding how to play the game. Okay? And that's why I'm always very strong in telling people have an employee manual before you hire your first person. Because this way, the guidelines have been set. If you bring them on and you give it to them the next day, it's too late. So anything they do from that point on, you can't do anything to them. Because you didn't give it to them right at the start. So, the thing is and what will be in it, we'll talk briefly about that. But the thing is, these are things you have to think about. Okay, confidentiality agreements, non-compete agreements. Okay, everybody understand what confidentiality means? If you have secrets or tools you use that are unique or potentially give you an advantage over your competition, you don't want that shared. Okay? So the thing is, you have your employees sign this. So then that way they are held legally responsible. If they leave or you terminate them, if they divulge you information, you have legal recourse against them. Okay? Non-compete, this is really important because the fact is, if you let them go, they cannot go after your people you've talked to for sales, future payments, things like that. They can't go after even people you're just going out initially reaching that you're not even doing business with. Those are all hands off at that point for non-competes. Okay. Remember that non-compete's only good for 2 years. Don't try to make it lifetime. It just doesn't work in a court of law. 2 years to max you'll get out of it. So make sure it's just set 2 years.
And geographic.
Yeah, and geographically can be. Yeah. If you're going to go global, then you better write it that you're global, even though you may not be initially. So, yeah. Understanding footprints, things like that. And then also, depending on what you're doing, whether you have to comply with OSHA, EPA, or the American Disabilities Act. You know, if you're getting a facility, you know, you're going to have to comply with ADA. You know, and I always stress it to people, when you take in a historical structure, then you have to jump through a lot of hoops of trying to get variances and things like that under ADA. And depending on the building inspector, how compliant they will be about that or not. I have one where the main structure that held the house up was where they wanted to put the bathroom, ADA bathroom. There was no way you could do it. Otherwise the house was going to collapse. They went round and around with this whole thing. Eventually they couldn't do anything with the house. So these are things to really be aware of in understanding who the building inspectors are and things like that, because this does come into play. Anyway, hiring good talent, I cannot stress that enough. Chemistry is the first thing. If you have a high turnover rate, or you're in an industry like restaurants that have high turnover, the reality is you have to design your business to deal with it that way. A lot of companies don't do that. They figure everybody's going to always want to stay with them. It's not like that anymore, especially with millennials too. Millennials, they move. And so understand that if you get a millennial for 5 years, you're doing great. So your model has to take that into account. How do I deal with that as I move forward? If you're really shoestring, like I ran a lot of my company's shoestring, absentee contingency. Somebody calls in sick, what do? You know, I always basically would take the position of that person missing to do the work. So that way things kept moving. You know, the hybrid models are set up. And then what training are you requiring of the job? On the job checklist. These are things that are in place to protect you in case you get an employee that wants to challenge you. You've done everything you can to basically make sure that this is not really a lot of extra work. There's software programs out there that have pretty much everything. You pick and choose what you want to do. You know, so understand that. So like example, I always tell people, if you don't have a drug policy, everybody that's a drug addict will be at your door. Okay? Because they know who does drug testing and who doesn't. So understand, that's real world. Okay? And
on the job checklist be anything I ask you to do?
you can put that as long as it's not anything unreasonable, because you got to remember harassment and everything. So you got to watch that fine line. You know, other duties assigned, that's okay to say that.
So what?
Other duties as assigned. So, but the thing is, these are things you have to think about in today's world. Because, I'll be candid, when I have an employee that I would terminate for a violation like of our drug policy, they could go file for unemployment benefits. If I knew the judge was employee friendly, don't even go waste your time fighting, because the judge is going to award it. So just let it go. Don't even spend the time paying the attorney and everything else, because you're going to lose. So it's understanding who the judges are from the human capital side. You are making your decisions. If they're employer friendly, challenge them. If they're not, save your money. You know, these are things you have to think about, even when it's wrong. It's just about bottom line is dollar. You know, you got to make money to keep the business going. So these are business decisions. Okay. So we look at this. So anyway, I always tell people in your human capital policy, you basically annually for new requirements. And human capital manager, typically, it used to be 100. They used to be the standard. Today, I tell people it's 50. You know, once you get 50 employees, you better be looking to hire a full-time person, just because of all the regulations now, with everything that's in place. Insurance, okay, required, unemployment, workers' compensation, insurance, disability, okay? In some states, not this state, but in others. So the thing is that understand, these are really all you have to do if you really want. You don't have to do anything else. It'd be crazy not to do that, but you know, the fact is, this is where a lot of people try to take shortcuts. And this is the one that I feel terrible because people will cancel their like fire insurance, and guess what? They have a fire. And then they've lost everything. Yeah. So I always tell people, do not play with your insurances. You think you can save money, cut it. You know, the odds are really against this happening. It will come back and haunt you. Can't stress that enough. So you assess your risk, you shop around, business owner's policy package, which gives you everything. And then business agents that, you know, and all you have to do is ask, word of mouth, Chamber of Commerce. They can give you ideas of people that do a really nice job and things like that. Anyway, lots of times people have general liability. Those of you who are going to have a product liability. If you're doing professional services, that recommendations and things like that, it's professional liability to protect you. If you have commercial property, this is a big one that a lot of people don't get, should get, business interruption. So if a disaster hits, this keeps paying to keep going for a lot of people. Example, when I had my manufacturing facility, if I lost my manufacturing facility, technically I was out of business. I actually had contracts signed with my competitors to actually run my material if I lost my facility. So, and they basically had the agreement with us. You know, and with me, I was doing formulation, so I had to share my formulas with them. But we had to do all the agreements, signs, and everything else. But we knew each other, we were looking out for each other in time of need. And that's the thing you have to pay attention to. Remember that when a disaster hits, 40% of the businesses never open their doors again. And within a year, another 40% don't open their or close their doors. That's how big an impact the disaster is. Okay. This one's becoming a big issue now. We hear it every day in the news. As a small business, it's the kiss of death. You have a cyber incident, you're out. You're done. Nobody will do business with you. Because as soon as it gets out, everybody knows that we can't trust you protecting our information. And this is the thing I cannot bring up enough. This is happening every day to small businesses because they just get complacent. Well, nobody really wants to aggregate, but a lot of people don't understand is, especially small business, they're typically supplying bigger companies, and they basically have a direct inline to that company, communication-wise, and that's where the problems develop. When Target went down, it was because of a company in Pittsburgh that did maintenance work. That's how they wormed in. Okay. And the thing is, even though their systems told them there was something wrong, they didn't react. But the company that was doing the work, they're no longer in business. Yeah. And this is why we stress that you have to take care of your operations. So people stood. I can tell you right now, if, you know, which none of you were looking at, but if you were going to the government contractor, it's mandated now. Any Department of Defense work, you have to have a cybersecurity system in place. A plan, everything, say what you're going to do, what you do, and all that. If you don't have it, you can't do government work. So that's a whole paradigm shift now, and that's focusing on NIST guidelines. So you have to follow the NIST guidelines that came out related to that. And that takes some work with it. And then floods. Remember, you may not be in a flood area. But if somebody cuts the tree down and blocks where the water usually runs, and it backs up and floods, it's a flood. So you're not covered. So just be aware of that these are things that are crazy, because I had a company that basically had a railroad track that was basically about this high off the ground. Every time it rained, it was a dry riverbed. Every time it rained, all the debris would come down and block up and back up. Well, he was an asphalt company, and it was really backing up, and he was on a hill. And he knew he was going to, so he basically went down and dug the stuff out to get the water to push through in the storm. And they fined him $25,000 because it was against the law. Even though he's trying to preserve his business.
Who elected the EPA? That's what I always say.
So I'm just telling you, these are the dynamics you deal with all the time. Another company basically was backed up, went and cut the tree that was blocking, and he got basically cited because he was fooling with Mother Nature. So these are rules that are in place that have significant impacts, and you sometimes wonder where common sense comes into play with it. The other thing is, if you're getting financing, okay, that sometimes if you are the backbone of that company, so if something happens to you, the company goes under, and you're getting financing, they will tell you to get life insurance policy on your, up to the amount of that loan. So then that way, if you happen to pass away, they have a way to get paid. Anyway, insurance you evaluate on an annual basis. Just look to see how you want to look, because you may have grown, you may have shrunk, and needs to change how your policy looks as you go forward. Okay, this is a business curve. Okay, all of you are pretty much in this area right now, correct? Okay, now the next thing you should do if you really want to understand the industry you're going into, where is it on the growth curve? Is it new technology? Is it something that's exploding with growth? Like cyber market and that? Or is it a mature industry? Why is that important? Because that tells me how you have to look and what you're going to have to spend your money where. Because if it's a mature industry, you're going to spend a lot of money because you got to break through all the clutter. So you're spending a lot of marketing dollars. If it's something in growth mode, you can jump right in there and run. You know, it's not so much about marketing at that point, it's showing that you can do good work. So it's how you look at this point, and these are things that people don't understand lots of times. The other thing is understanding global, because global impacts you. So what's the sector doing globally, too, comes in and has a ripple effect. And this is where a lot of people don't do that. They focus on the startup. I go, okay, tell me about the industry. Well, my competitors, I said, no, tell me about the industry. Where's it at? Is it a growth mode? Is it flatline? Is it dying? You know, because that tells me what you should be doing. The other thing is, if you're looking for financing, if it's a growth industry, you've got potential. If it's a startup sector, forget it. Growth, interest. Mature, no interest. Because you're a startup. These are things you have to take into account. That tells you where you fit in the model. These are things you have to think about. And I cannot stress this enough. You're a global economy. No matter what, you are global. As soon as you put yourself on the web, you are global. Well, I'm never going overseas. Well, wait a second. Are people coming to you? See, somebody globally calling. So somebody's coming in to visit the region that's not from this country. That's a global impact. They're doing their research. What do they want to go see? That's the real world today. Yeah, it's funny when I talk to people internationally and that I see and I talk to them, and that's basically what they said. Yeah, I Googled the area and I found it and they had this, so I came to experience it. That's why it's important to understand that you're going to get people from outside the country. So, like, it's really important. Like, in this region, if you're a tourism type industry, who's the largest customers that come from other countries to this location? Are they from Europe? They're from Asia? Where are they from?
Canadians and Germans.
Canadians and Germans. Okay, so that tells you something very important, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. Anyway, the market. Who is your target market that you're actually going for? I cannot tell you that most small businesses do not know their target market. If you can't tell me your target market, I'm not going to give you a dime. You know, and this is a weak link with a lot of people. The product, service, interest, do the competition. And the competition, when we talk about competition, we're talking also about direct competition and indirect. So, give you a scenario. I want a hamburger. Okay? So, I have my favorite hamburger place I go to, but it's really packed up. So, I'm going to go to another one. So, how many different hamburger places do we have? Right? Okay. All the hamburger places are really busy. So, you know, I'm going to get a taco. That's an indirect. Okay? It's not a direct competitor because I wanted a hamburger, but I settled for a taco. Okay? So it's an indirect competitor. So understand, a lot of people don't understand who their indirect competition is. They're good at understanding the direct, but they do not understand their indirects. And these are things you have to think about. Price points, you know, we'll talk later, break even, you know, what's it cost me to basically make it or do my service or whatever, and at the end of it, it's zero. That's my break even. So everything I put into it, and they pay me, that's break even. So everything above that becomes, what do I set my price point for? It's like a restaurant. If a restaurant cannot sit there and tell me how much each plate costs of food, they don't know what they're doing. At successful restaurants, they know how much per plate costs if everything goes on. So these are things you look at. Anyway, if you're going to have trademark copyright, the U.S. Patent, USPTO.gov, excellent site to help you with that if you're trying to do a trademark or a copyright. And then, what is that market strategy that you're putting together? You know, where are we going with this? So, this is what everybody talks about today, okay? All the different locations that you can go and put yourself and everything out. The one thing, and the list goes on and on, but the one thing I want to stress to you is people do all this and I go, what does your target audience go to? And they can't tell me. If you really understand your target audience, you know what electronic mechanisms they use. Are they mostly Facebook? You know, are they Instagram, Pinterest? What is it? You know, where do they go? If you understand that, it makes it very easy. And the reason I put this up first, because most of this stuff doesn't really cost you anything. So you can be very marketable and not put a lot of money out if you know how to do it. You know, creating your own YouTube channel, which Sandy, great asset to help you do that. That's what this right here. It's got its own website, own YouTube site. So, you know, you have an asset right there. Please use it to help you with these things. But these are things you look at when you're in business. Okay, when we talk about the website, remember we talked about German, Canadian? Okay, then your website, if you're tourism, should be in German also. Because people will come to you because you took the time to note their language. Remember, and understand this, and this is the thing that we get hit with across the world, is everybody thinks we're egomaniacs. And the thing is, think about it. What other country in the world speaks American English? None. Who teaches American English across the world? What do everybody that learns English, what do they learn? American or British? They learn British English. Does that tell you we kind of stand alone? So when your website is in American English and no other language, we're arrogant. So that's why you put it in another language. And nothing else, you should put it in Spanish, because that's our second most common language in this country. That also makes you look bigger than what you are. So understand that too. And it's not a big investment. So things to think about. Anyway, traditional ways. Understand this, really think hard if you're going to put this money out. Because how many people have I seen sit here, print out these beautiful brochures, and all of a sudden they want to change something on it. And then I see these little white tags on them. Yeah. This is my new address. This is my new phone number. And I'm going, you spent all this money, and now you're just irritated. What does that say about your quality at that point? You know, you can't use quality as your argument. So I always tell people, think real hard about when you start jumping into this arena that you're going to get your ROI, return on investment. If you're not, then don't do it. Anyway, in sales, you know, Google Analytics is great for your website and things. There's plenty of people that can do it for you. I always tell people, get a college student. No, have them do an internship with you. They'll educate you, teach you, and then show you how the thing works. You know, they learn something that's a resume builder for you, and you all win at the end of the day. If you're growing, then you'll get a business development person. You know, understand your forecasting, your pricing. Your pricing is going to change depending on what's dynamically going on. Another thing that a lot of people don't look at, looking at your product line or service and what other sectors can I go with it. You know, people kind of get locked into an area, and I always say, what are those other areas that potentially you could run into that could create economic growth for you? Even some minor changes to your operations may create new markets. It's just making that investment. And then the biggest thing is customer complaints, jump on them quickly, address them. Do not be afraid to sit there and not challenge them, just say, I'm sorry for it, because we're all different. So we all experience things differently how we see it at the end of the day. So just accept that. So customers, I tell people with customers, once you have a customer space, if you have customers, you know, if you're dealing in business where it's a one-time customer, it's different. But if you're a base where you have regular customers, I always tell people, look at who's my most profitable customer and who's my least profitable customer. I do that every quarter because why? Because if I get new business, I'm going to dump my least profitable. I'm going to let them go to my competitors. I will guide them to my competitors so I can sit here and take care of my most profitable. So always do that check, at least quarterly. I used to do that all the time in my business. That way I weighed everything. That way it kept my business growing and kept my profits up. People get complacent when they say, I got all these customers. I say, but you're making no money. And it's because they got locked into these relationships many years ago and they never raised their pricing or anything. And these are things you got to think about when you're in business. Logistics. If you have that, and mostly if you're getting supplies, suppliers are key. And right now, because of, and these are things you have to think about. Disaster hit, okay, down south. So where's all the materials going right now? They're going south. You can't get trucks to come north. So truck costs are off the roof right now, coming up north. And the thing is that's a real challenge for a lot of companies trying to get their supplies. It's having a significant impact. So I always tell people, you got to pay attention. When a hurricane was coming in to my location in Louisiana that supplied me my resins and that, I literally had to order a rail car and get it shipped up to basically north of the Mason-Dixon line. So I had it protected. So when they went down, shut down, I would still be able to stay operational. These are the things you have to think about in business. You've got to pay attention to what's happening all around you to make sure you don't let your customers down. Packaging, you know, if you're creating a product or whatever, how's that going to look? It's real important, especially in our society. You know, it'd be nice if everybody would just be happy with the brown box, but we're not. And so that's a big market, huge market. As I talked about earlier, weather comes into play, especially this winter. You've seen all the accidents, roads closed down. Those have ripple effects. They're literally shutting down production lines and everything. Do not just have one supplier, always have at least two. And always give business to both. Even if it's 75-25, whatever. Make sure you're always giving business to both. That takes care of you in time of need. You know, limited payment terms, you know, always work it your way. Be willing to negotiate. Do you need a warehouse or do you do, which means you have inventory? Remember, if you have inventory, it's sitting on the floor making you no money, but it's costing you because it's sitting there. You've already put the investment, but you're making no money. Okay, I took over a company and I had $1 million of inventory sitting on the floor. You know, it's 2 weeks out from my customers. I converted to a just-in-time, and basically I was money in my pocket. But it created another challenge because I had to make sure my raw materials are coming in just as I was using silos and things. So my silo would be going empty, and I'd have to have the truck ready to fill. So it was a very tight logistics from that standpoint, but that's what you do when you're just in time. But it really helps the bottom line because you don't have stuff sitting on the floor. And basically 24 hours, it's out the door.
It just dawned on me, being the business I told you I was in before. We had a Lowe's in Elizabethtown, Kentucky. And when they first built it, you couldn't find a space on that track that couldn't be. And about 2 years later, we had that manager go out, another manager come in, and everything got emptied out. And that had to be the reason why, because they would run out of things, and they say, well, we got to reorder, do this. But when it's like for 2 years, every rack was filled, and then all of a sudden, it was like that for 12 more years. When I left, it was still that way. They were doing that just in time in inventory.
Yeah. If you do it well, it works great. We were really good at it. Yeah. But it was a nightmare, especially when weather was playing havoc with winter storms or hurricanes.
What do you say you use more than one supplier? What if you have a supplier, if you buy everything from him, you're getting a better price? And then if you split
Actually, you don't. I will tell you what happens. Over time, they take that for granted, and you don't get the price breaks like you do because they know you've just gotten comfortable with it. Yeah.
Especially with food purveyors.
Yeah.
So that's like a big thing. And if they know that you've got two people, yes.
They say, and that's why I always tell people do a 75-25. It keeps it very honest. And then if they, they're slow to respond, you basically give the next 2 orders to the other one. And then that kind of sits there and says, hey, look, it's business. You didn't take care of me. And it wakes them up. I used to do that all the time. I enjoyed that part of my life. Anyway, you use them all. So anyway, this is something to decide because lots of people automatically start talking about warehousing and that. And I said, really, do you need a warehouse? Think about your operation, how you operate. In the sense you think about it. Okay, and then in manufacturing, these are things you got to take into account. Lots of times people don't think this stuff through. They just think, oh, everything will work perfect. It doesn't. Remember, if you're involved with equipment, equipment runs best if it's running 24/7. If it shuts down, it has a bear when you go to start it up. So I always made sure that when I had round-the-clock operations, they ran 24/7 because I had less headaches. So these are things you have to take into account and understand your operations. And like I said, for that, you basically, if you're shipping out daily basis, it's a daily thing. Monthly, you're always looking at your profitability, especially your carriers. If you're using multiple carriers, who's taking care of you, who's not. Quarterly and then annually at the end of the day. These are things you look at. Finances, accounts receivable, accounts payable. The three that I have bolded here, cash flow, balance sheet, income statement, I don't care if you know nothing about accounting or anything else. You've got to be able to read those 3 statements. If you understand those 3 statements, the accountant's not going to be able to take advantage of it. And why do I bring that up? Most small businesses get themselves in trouble with the IRS because of fraud. And it's typically because the accountant skimmed the books. And you didn't know about it. But who pays the price? You, because it's your company, and you carry the penalties and everything else. The accountant just goes to another state and starts over again. So the thing is, you pay the price. So that's why it's really important for you to understand these 3. If you understand those 3, you've got control. You know what's going on. Sales forecast, taxes. Yes, please pay your taxes. Understand, if you cannot make your tax payment, whether it's federal, state, whatever, the one tax you cannot ever miss is a payroll tax. You miss a payroll tax, you have no more friends. That is the one tax you always make sure you pay. The others you can always work out. That one, there's no forgiveness.
And also, even if you file it 30 years ago, if I was behind, I would file it late, pay a penalty. It's much less to file it on time.
Yeah.
Even with 0 money.
Yeah.
And then pay it later.
Yeah. Sometimes the penalties is more than what the tax is.
Yeah. Yeah.
They don't tell you that.
No. But you're
Well,
asking.
As soon as you, don't pay.
You know,
I'll let you know.
at one time I employed about 7 people, and the thing that I did was took it out weekly. Whatever I took out of their check, I would have matched and paid with a tax coupon so that I didn't have to come up with that quarterly dollar amount, because, you know, it is a killer if you have to come up with a quarter.
Yeah, especially if you're not really keeping good track of it.
Yes.
Yeah. So, anyway, daily sales, accounts receivable, accounts payable, monthly cash flow, income balance. But, anyway, these are, you know, DB, PAYDAX, this is kind of their credit score for the business. So if you grow enough, that's something you may want to consider getting yourself into. And then annually, how you want to forecast for your future years, how you're going to look as a company, invest in things and all that. IT, this is the backbone of the company anymore. So even if you're just doing basic renovations, it's your backbone, literally. And today we're changing because of the cloud and everything else, so it's a totally different market. And I tell people you really got to have some basic understanding so you know what you're putting in place. But the one thing is you definitely got to have a cybersecurity program in place. You've got to protect yourself. And, you know, having your, well, I have my own server. It's like, guys, really having your own server today is not the best thing in the cloud. So I don't care how small you are, it's still better to be in the cloud. So that's the thing to be aware of as you look at this stuff. You know, what software do you truly need? Because some of you have unique applications, you will do that. Your event planning schedule is going to look very different. You're going to have a much more sophisticated system than somebody who just has to line up basic appointments. So those are things you're going to look at. So this is kind of how you weigh things out. The thing is, don't let people sell you, because today's basic computer, for most of you, is more sophisticated than what you need. So you don't need to buy a bells and whistles computer system. Most of them will more than meet your needs. So don't spend a lot of money. You know, where you come into play is typically what your software is. And the thing is that it's what you do. So like if I create my website, your investment in the website is to make it a mobile app so that people can see it on your smartphone and not see it like out of proportion because you didn't upgrade it to be mobile friendly. So almost everything has to be mobile friendly. So that's something to be aware of as you create your site, because everybody's just using a mobile phone. And at least quarterly, annually, looking at your IT systems to see how they're acting efficiently and things like that. Disaster. Cyber's number one now. You know, everybody talks about natural. Cyber's the one that closes your doors, literally. Whether you're hacked yourself or whether they impact you directly, because then you have to notify our customers. What do you think your customers are going to do? They're gone. They're not going to stay around. You know, because now they can't trust you because you just basically violated. So if you lost your customers, you can't stay in business. If you sit there and you take out a big company, guess what? You've been nailed on that, and all the bigger companies will never talk to you again. So this is a big downfall for a lot of the businesses they have to take into account. Then we have our natural, then our man-made, you know, like power utilities go out, things like that. Mechanical failures, and we have talked about before, the business resumption plan, business resumption insurance. That's really important for you to have that planned out. So what do I do in a time of disaster? So if you're especially taking care of customers, you have to have contingencies. The excuse of, I had a disaster, carries for about a week. After that, the customer wants the product or service. And if you can't supply it, they're going someplace else. So it's a short-lived thing. You'll get the sympathy, you'll get the little violin for a little while, but then it's gone. So just realize that. That's why it's really important to have a plan. the day, as you're process of anything, it's all about this keyword right here. Research, research, research. There's tons of data, and it's all about analyzing the data. The day that you officially open your doors, this is what you will be doing continuously in your business. For the rest of the time, those doors are open. You will be doing research, how to keep your company competitive, how to grow it, whatever. But this is what it's become in today's world because of our information that you have readily available. Outside team, definitely an accountant, assurance representative, IT, cyber, human capital if you're bringing in employees, lawyer type lender. I kind of rate it from top to bottom, who's your first priority on down, because this is kind of how things have the impacts on the business. So just be aware. So that's just dealing with it with customers I've dealt with in the past and things. Anyway, there's tons of resources. Like you guys are working on your financial projections, right?
Yep.
Okay, if you go to score.org, you can put in your numbers and it'll do everything for you. So it does all the mapping for you and all that. So it'll give you financial projections, it'll do your balance sheet, everything. So it's right there free of charge. So and then you can plug and play. You can play with the numbers to kind of see what things look like. But these are different organizations that have things available to assist you besides the resources we have here, and we have the SBDC, Small Business Development Centers, and things like that. As you move forward, build a strong team. Remember, it's chemistry, teamwork, integrity, and team need. That's what it is. That's what creates success. Okay, as you move. And the one thing I want to stress to you is, no matter how you plan for everything that you think you plan for, there are two unknowns. One is luck, and one is timing. Sometimes it works in your favor, sometimes it works against you. Just take it in stride, that's just business. Don't get upset about it, don't blame other people, it's just reality. I've had good times and I've had bad times, it's just the way it falls. And last but not least, no matter what you do, you will always be flying by the seat of your pants. So just remember that as you move forward. Okay? Questions?
Very interesting. I'll just make a comment. Great presentation.
Thank you.
I have a comment.
Yeah.
Mostly for anybody who hasn't ordered business cards or ride cards, that sort of thing yet. When you go, like if you did it on something like Vistaprint, obviously the more you buy, the better the deal. But I would recommend the first time you order the smallest amount possible, because almost without fail, when you get it in your hand or you hand it out to people, they're going to have some feedback. You're going to forget something, or not always, but almost without. So start with a really small order. Get some feedback from people. Let it sit with you for a little bit. Don't be in such a hurry. And then when you have what you think you want, then order bigger.
And remember, your business card, first thing you hand, two things immediately, three things, okay, is eye contact, the handshake, and your business card. Does it limp over when you hand it to somebody? If it does, it's a clear indication how cheap you are. Now, don't talk to me about quality at that point.
And I caution against the black or a dark background, because for those people that use scanner services to scan business cards, it makes it very difficult for them to pick up.
Now you tell me.
You want the background to be what now?
Not dark.
Preferably white, where it will pick up. Because I mean, when someone hands me a business card, I have an app that it'll automatically scan and detect everything. But if it's a dark one, I'm having to manually put it in there. And
Yeah, I've
those
had
that
some
have
black
those
ones,
machines.
and I can't even read them because I'm so old and I need glasses.
But
All mine are
these
black.
things to look at. These are all a reflection of you. So understand, even the most basic things that you're starting out with are a reflection before you even open your mouth. People have already made a judgment against you. So that's how quick it is. So remember that as you go forward. And with that, like I said, you have my business card, and you can contact me anytime. I'm happy to try to assist you. If you need to come out here, I'll come out here, whatever. I wish you guys all much success. And, whether you win or lose doesn't matter. You've already got the foundation. Please go forward with it. Do not be deterred by that. That's not a reflection of you, it's just complicated. And it's like winning a contract.
And don't forget next week's sessions on marketing, which is one of my favorite topics. And again, I keep reiterating, if you've not reached out to mentors, don't wait till the last minute. They're here to help you, and we've got a good variety, so take advantage of it. Let's thank Carl for coming.
And just to emphasize what Kathy said, I went